monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings. Join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 40. I am, of course, Chad Charlesworth, and I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, Lesson Cabbage, on this most festive and belated holiday of Halloween. So how are you doing this evening, buddy?
I am doing good, my friend, and happy belated Halloween to you as well. I'm on the downward spiral of a candy high right now.
It's always good.
Yeah. Well, you know how it is when you have little ones that go out trick or treating and everything, and you get to reap the rewards of their bounty just as much as they do. But I'd like to welcome everybody to the show tonight, and as Chad has stated, this is our 40th episode and our second annual Halloween show. Now, granted, obviously, you know, it's a couple days after, but we're still going to be doing a Halloween-esque show. Not that all of our shows aren't really Halloween-esque. They all are if you think about it. But before we begin, I want to remind everybody of how you could get in touch with us, as you know, that's something we always have to do. You could go to our website at www.explorersgroup.com. There you could watch archive shows, contact us, learn a little bit more about the group, and so on and so forth. Oh, and when you watch our archive shows, you could actually link to our YouTube channel. So while you're there, give us a like and a subscribe and all that stuff, you know. And we're on Twitter at Explorers Group. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Explorers Group. And we're on Instagram at Explorers Group, and so on and so forth. And we always ask every show if you could go to iTunes, search Explorers Seekers of the Truth, give us a 5-star review, leave some kind words if you don't mind, and help us grow our viewership on iTunes so we become searchable for other people to find and hopefully enjoy, as we hope you all do. So now with that out of the way, I think we're good.
So in light of our second annual Halloween episode, we're going to talk about a mix of legends and mythology, and also we're going to include some of those stories I'd asked for on Facebook. You know, a couple of you guys had sent some in, and so we're going to cover a few of them. And this being my favorite time of year, it's actually my favorite holiday, of course, and you know, not just because of candy and costumes, though. You know, I do like the candy, but of course, and you know, also because we hunt for monsters in our hobby. But again, it's one of those things where my thing is like the history of all this. So, you know, you always hear me, I'm always one pumping out history when we talk about stuff, but you know, the history of Halloween is really important to what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be right if we didn't do a show without a little bit of history in it, now would it? So let's talk about, excuse me if I can talk. Let's talk a little bit about Halloween became what we know it today. It actually first came about around 2,000 years ago as a pagan holiday called Samhain, or more commonly mispronounced Samhain. October 31st was the Celtic New Year and the end of the harvest season, and it's believed that during this time the veil between the world and the living was at its thinnest, and it was believed that it was during this time that the spirits of the departed could return and walk amongst the world of the living. So to appease the spirits, food offerings were left out for the dead to discourage their mischievous ways and to hopefully avoid any kind of ill intent as they're making their way through the living world. On that also is what kind of brought about trick or treat, or the concept of trick or treat, for going around getting gifts or trinkets or treats. And on Samhain, the villagers would adorn themselves with costumes and dance around ritual fires, bringing home the embers from the blaze for their hearths in a hollowed out turnip. And the turnips were oftentimes let out on the stoop in an attempt to ward off any evil spirits. And this is where the jack-o'-lantern had come from. And as with most things, Samhain was Christianized. The Catholic Church co-opted Samhain to win converts, and rebranding it as All Saints Day, or in Middle English, it evolved to All Hallow Mass, to All Hallowmas, then All Hallows Eve, and then eventually ending up Halloween. And largely the Irish popularized the most festive of holidays in the U.S. when they fled the Great Famine between 1845 and 1849. That's the condensed history of Halloween. So, unfortunately, as with most things in modern times, the life is bled from old beliefs and made into commercialized events to generate the gift that taketh as much as it giveth, money. Greed. Gotta love it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate how traditions end up, this money pit of despair.
Mm-hmm.
And, along with the history of Halloween, one of the traditions around the world is the telling of, ghost or spooky stories.
Mm-hmm.
A good ghost story is always fun to share at night, when you're sitting around the campfire. And, the way we look at it is there's no better time of, year than when the veil between living and the dead is at its thinnest around Halloween. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite legends that has been, featured in such movies as Sleepy Hollow and the Fox TV show of the same name. And I'm referring to that of the Headless Horseman and the Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my favorite was the Disney cartoon version of that, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow with Ichabod Crane. And actually, we have a little image here, as most people probably remember the Disney little short film of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that is a classic. And I'm sure that's one of the main reasons people today know the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, with its tale, of Ichabod Crane, the slight yet smart school teacher, and the menacing Headless Horseman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was written by Washington Irving, and drawing inspiration from real life events that took place in and around Tarrytown, New York. But did you know there's another headless creature from mythology that parallels the story in many ways?
Oh, really? Now, I knew of Irving's story, and it was based on some kind of, excuse me, oh, God, some kind of truth with the Headless Horseman. I think it was like he was like a Hessian soldier contracted by the British to aid in the battles during the time, I think around like the Revolutionary War time.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that it actually the headless the story, like with the Ichabod Crane and what was the girl's name? I'm drawing a blank here.
Beats me.
Yeah, whatever his love interest was, there was, and I think you had mentioned it. It was a family in Tarrytown, New York, that the novel or the story was kind of based after. So that's pretty cool. And I've heard that, but I haven't actually ever heard of anything else that would parallel it. So that's kind of, you have my attention.
Well, there is a creature in mythology, and it's not really human, or human nature or human being. This creature I'm talking about dwells more in the spirit or fairy realm,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the Irish Doulahan.
Doulahan.
And basically, the meaning of Doulahan is without a head in Irish. I'm not even going to try to do the pronunciation of the old Irish Gaelic language. This is where we need Andy.
Yeah, he'd be perfect. Now, I think I'll butcher it. I think it's pronounced Gan Sian, but I'm not sure. Andy would be able to. It's probably a couple of some kind of odd dialect to the enunciation, but yeah, I don't know. We'll butcher it.
I thought you said Yan can cook, and I had a flashback of my childhood there for a second.
That's good.
Just remember, if Yan can cook, so can you. Wow, racist.
A little bit.
So now, the Dullahan is a type of unseelie fairy in Irish mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And the depiction of the Dullahan is a headless rider, generally riding a black horse, who carries his own head under one of his arms as he rides.
Hmm.
Now, usually it is depicted as a male, but there
Mhm.
are some versions in the folklore that have it being a female.
Okay.
And you know, I I couldn't really find a ton of. Sorry, I'm drinking out of my new skull.
Nice.
My wife was nice enough to bring it over to me because I left it in the kitchen.
Cool.
So now the description of the head itself is generally the mouth is usually in this hideous grin
Mm.
where the face, kind of is so the mouth area is so spread out that it touches both sides of the head. Basically, it's drawn out,
Ooh.
and its eyes are said to constantly move. And basically, the reason given for the eye movement is so that it can see across the countryside, even on the darkest of nights. Now, the flesh of the head is generally described as that color and consistency of moldy cheese.
Oh God.
Now, I don't know if it smells like moldy cheese, but the
Oh.
consistency and color of moldy cheese.
Right, right. Oh, that's weird.
And the Dullahan is believed to use the spine of a human corpse as a whip. Now,
Yeah.
that's just kinky.
Yeah, that is. That's hardcore. That's like Predator with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah,
Remember they
yeah,
rip the
kind of.
skull and the spine out together and it's like their trophy?
It makes me wonder sometimes, like, if when people are creating these new Hollywood movies,
Mm-hmm.
if at some point in their life they didn't hear something about these folklore and legends and mythology and kind of like, oh yeah, that would be really cool to have a spine whip for
Mm-hmm.
this creature.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, where else would they draw inspiration? I mean, even if you ever watch like that TV show on Sci-Fi, Face Off. They've ever seen it where they're like makeup artists
Yeah.
and that show is great. But a lot of the stuff that they get their inspiration from are different kind of legends and stories and myths
Mhm.
and folk tale creatures and stuff like that. So yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think we have such a rich mythology to draw from. So some of this stuff is, you take a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, and you kind of, wrap it up. And if you're a good artist like yourself, not
Mhm.
me, I'm not a good artist, but you could design something taking little bits of these, different mythological creatures and kind of make something new out of them.
Yeah. Well,
Now,
hey, don't discredit yourself with your artistic abilities because when you made that kind of explorers code of shield type thing, that was actually really good. You did a good job.
I trace the background for that.
You could have left it alone and said thank you. I didn't know that. I guess that's why it came out so well. No, that
Yeah,
was really cool.
I actually kind of like that design. Maybe one day we'll see it on merchandise.
Yeah.
So
Someday.
now here's one of the differences between what we know of in the Spooky Hollow Headless Horseman saga
Hmm.
is the Dullahan a lot of times is also depicted as having a wagon, like
Hmm.
a horse-drawn wagon behind him.
Uh-huh.
And it's generally said to be adorned with funeral objects.
Right.
It has candles, it actually has candles and candelabras and urns and some people even say coffins.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
now the Dullahan inside of its skull is actually is said to have a candle,
Okay.
and the candle is to help light its way as it goes. Now, here again, this is something, with modern art and movies. If you think about it, like one of the things, the wagon wheels of the Dullahan's wagon are made from the human thigh bones.
Nice.
Um, it's covered with dried human skin. The top of the wagon is made of dried human skin.
Hmm.
And the ancient Irish believe that were the Dullahan to stop writing, a person is due to die.
Oh.
The
So in a
and
way, it's kind of like the Grim Reaper.
yeah, kind of in a lot of ways, and maybe the Grim Reaper does kind of take some of the mythology from this in a way. And what it said is the Dullahan is said to call out a person's name, and at which point the person immediately drops dead.
Now that is creepy, no doubt. So we did receive a story from one of our listeners. As Chad had said, we're going to share some of those stories that you all had, or some of you had shared with us, which we very much appreciate and thank you for your contributions. And it kind of goes along the lines of the fairy creatures, or what's the other word for them? Elementals or something like that, or like creatures of the earth, or
Elementals, I think, is what they're generally kind of
referred to. Yeah. What if your name is Doulahan Moonjoy? Yeah, that's a good point. And what do you do then? But do you want to tell everybody about how what had transpired with the story?
Yeah, actually, speaking of Moon Joey, I hope you don't mind, since you did actually send us a few of your stories. One of them dealing with an elemental was something, with it being dwelling, the Dullahan dwelling in the fairy and elemental realm. I figured this would be a good time to tell this story. The only thing I'm missing is the flashlight for under my chin in dark, a dark room. But
oh yeah, you got to set the ambiance.
Well, I mean, I could, play a little. Of course, I can't hear this, so I hope you all enjoy it.
It sounds like thunder and lightning.
Oh, well, hold on. Yeah, probably not a good idea to let me have a soundboard.
It's actually fitting because it is like pouring down rain outside my house right now. So again, ladies and gentlemen, it wouldn't be an Explorers Seekers of the Truth show if we didn't have some kind of a freaking technical difficulty. So chances are, with the rain and how hard it's raining, I'm probably going to lose power. So if the show drops at all, I apologize in advance, and I hope we could get it back up and running. But let's hope that it doesn't, and we could go through. So how about that story, Chad?
Okay. So this story, while exploring an abandoned railroad tunnel in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, along Old Gold Mine Camp Road near Colorado Springs, Colorado, I'd forgotten to follow procedure when entering a possible domain of an elemental. Approaching the area of a 150-foot cliff, or excuse me, 150-foot climb. I really got to change the font on my computer some days. To an abandoned tunnel entrance, an incredible strong wind gust hit me on this very calm weather day. It is said that a strong breeze like this is a warning from elementals to turn back and keep away. Do you like my Linda Blair voice?
Sure.
I'm trying to do world's scariest places as I was reading. So I brought no offering and asked no permission to enter the dark tunnel. As I made my way through the darkness, seeking the exit at the other end, I came upon a partially caved-in area that I was climbing over to continue past it. The feeling in the tunnel suddenly changed. I stopped because I felt the difference, and a few seconds later, I was pushed backwards off the large boulder I was standing on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off there. I was just like, oh, that's not good news. Go ahead. Sorry.
My balance was disrupted so much that I had to leap off the boulder, else I would have been most likely injured in the fall. I did not feel any physical touch, but rather a force that somehow moved me abruptly backwards. As I had my wrist audio recorder on, it captured an EVP saying, "Leave."
Oh my God, that's creepy.
My reading of it, or just what was going on? Because I was pretty impressed with the reading as I was going.
No, the story was creepy. The reading was horrible. But go ahead, continue. I'm just kidding.
Hey. We went to the same school.
No, go ahead.
If that wasn't creepy enough, my video captured a slight movement on the tunnel wall where my spotlight hit. It is said that elementals take the shapes in rocks. I went back. I went back there subsequent times, and this time I made an offering of tobacco. I experienced nothing unusual that time. Apparently, I had shown the proper respect that time.
Hmm. You know, you hear that a lot about, especially with like entering caves or tunnels and stuff like that, where, um, especially with like indigenous people or tribal people in certain parts of the world, where they would leave offerings of respect before they would enter into different caves or tunnel systems because of what, I guess elemental type beings or creatures that live in there. So, and I guess we as a quote civilized society kind of write that off as, oh, it's just, mythology, it's folktale, it's this, it's that. But we truly don't know. There's a lot of stuff in this world that we don't know and we have not figured out. So could this be true? It very well could be. I mean, I've seen a lot of weird things, of which, a lot of people have heard our stories on some of our paranormal shows and stuff like that. I'm a believer that anything's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I just from personal experiences and talking to some other people who have, had similar experiences and had, different experiences, such as like, Moon Joey's story here. I wasn't there, but I've felt that way in places. Not necessarily caves or tunnels, but I've had that feeling, going through the woods or, crossing through old properties and stuff like that, where you just have that like, I've got to get through this section to get where I'm going, but I need, you always have a feeling like, even when I go into cemeteries,
Yeah.
I always am very polite. If I have to like cross over a section of graves or something like that, I'm always very polite. If I take a picture of a grave, I actually talk to the tombstones and say, I'm just taking your picture. It's nothing to be afraid of or worry about.
Yeah.
Which then people look at me like I'm crazy because I'm talking to tombstones. But hey, I try to pay my respects wherever possible to this kind of stuff. And I always just feel like with mythology and with folklore and legends of, basically all around the world, we find similar concepts, not necessarily similar creatures or similar mythology, but we find similar concepts.
Right.
So to me, that is, some people dispute this when I say it, but there's a reason why those concepts are shared between cultures who never had contact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Be it a misinterpretation of things going on around them at that time point, possible. But I don't think people in South America and people in Scotland and Ireland and Wales had the same things happen to them. The weather is different. There's different, types of food, different crops. So to say, oh, well, it's just similar experience, the shared human experience, when there was no sharing between those two cultures for, another 1,000 years, how do they have similar concepts in their folklore and mythology?
Mm-hmm.
Now, like the Romans and the Romans used the Greek mythology, renamed a lot of them to fit their language,
Right.
but they
Right.
borrowed those legends. When you see stuff in Scotland and then you see a similar item or concept, being shared by people in the Amazon, there's got to be something to that.
Right.
So I definitely think there is definitely stuff out there we don't understand. There's definitely stuff that we maybe can't quantify with science.
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of like what I was saying before. Is there's so many things that are being discovered, every year. Why not? And a lot of these, for lack of better terms, myths or fairy tales, folk tales, a lot of them started because of a physical thing. You know what I mean? Like a lot of they started somewhere. I mean, they can't all just be to scare kids to stay out of trouble and to stay out of, the dark room or whatever. I think that a lot of them have a lot of truth behind them. And, I don't know. But then again, I'm also a big sci-fi fan, and I love the Game of Thrones, and I wish, I wish that magic and mystery and mythology and all that stuff was real. But I don't know. There's so many people that have experienced so many different things that are credible people that were not on any kind of a mind enhancing or a psychedelic drug, or they weren't, drinking alcohol or anything, that they have these experiences. You know what I mean? Are they all wrong? Are they all?
Well, and see, that's one of the things, like, I look at, even if they were on, say, a substance like DMT,
Mhm,
which opens up your mind and lets your brain kind of go.
mhm,
We say, oh, those people are, because of that chemical, are seeing these things. But there are shared experiences with groups who are seeing the same things while taking DMT.
mhm.
So if you and I take DMT and I think we're about 300 miles apart right now,
Mhm.
and we're both not talking, and all of a sudden we're both writing down that we're seeing a fairy type creature with, a green outfit on, and we are not communicating that to each other. And then all of a sudden, an independent third party says, well, their descriptions match almost identical.
Right, right.
So I'm not saying people should go get drunk or go get high and go, exploring, but I think sometimes, like, it's an easy cop out to write that off.
Right.
And I mean, there's a lot of research being done on DMT with its effect on the brain and your consciousness. And scientists are seeing, like, people in controlled environments who are not communicating are experiencing the same thing.
Mhm.
So how are you experiencing the same thing as somebody who's in another room that you've never talked to, never met, and you guys are describing the same type of events and environments and stuff like that? So I think everybody kind of, you're neither hardcore into the science end of everything, and you're, oh, well, science says it's not possible, and nothing like this has ever existed, and so it can exist. Then
Right.
there are people who are more into the mythology and folklore of it all, and are saying, well, I've seen stuff, I've felt stuff. I
Mhm.
mean, I've been pushed before.
Right.
you know to be pushed and moved, not just like, oh, something, I felt like something pushed me, like to actually move back 2 steps. To me, nobody can ever argue with that. With me, they can't say, well, oh, well, your balance was off because of this, or you stepped on something uneven.
Right, right.
Well, I've been there before, I've been there since, and parked in the same area, got out, and walked, and never had that happen after that or before that. So, you know, I think a lot of it, comes down to personal feelings and beliefs on things. And I don't think anybody has the correct answers.
Mhm.
Yeah. Kelly brings up an interesting point there. Indian shaman use different herbs to communicate with the other worlds. That is something that shows up in almost every culture that has some form of shaman type person in their village.
Mm-hmm.
The use of these different herbs. And a lot of times when they start looking at it, a lot of times the same chemical compounds are found in, Gaelic, shamanistic practices that are found in Native American, shamanistic practices and found in South America. Now, North America, South America, explainable, not that far from each other.
Right.
But Northern Scotland and Ireland, those people aren't traveling in that time frame to North America to meet these people and deal with this and learn this stuff. So there are those things out there, like DMT is used in Brazil. It's actually legal. There's a church here that's originally from Brazil that is actually illegal. It's legal to do DMT on Christmas Eve. Otherwise, it's a controlled substance in America. I'm starting to sound like a really big proponent for DMT tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, man.
Just so everybody knows, I would be commenting back to a lot of what you all are writing, but for some reason, the last two shows in the Be Live interface, I'm not able to respond like I normally do. So I do apologize. We're not ignoring you. I can't write back. I don't know why. It's starting to irritate me. But welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't open Facebook while we do this. Otherwise, it screws up the show. So I can't respond either tonight.
Yeah. If you have Facebook and Be Live open at the same time, they crash each other. So freaking joy. So the next topic we're going to be covering is another one of Irish and or Celtic mythology. And it's always been kind of a creepy legend that always kind of freaked me out. Just the idea of it, because sounds in the dark are terrifying, and it's one of the trademarks of this next creature, what do you want to call it, specter, that we're going to be talking about. So why don't you tell everybody what we're going to talk about, Chad?
Okay, well, the next topic we're going to cover is the banshee. And basically, the meaning of the word is woman of the fairy mound or fairy woman. Mm-hmm. And basically described as it's a female spirit in Irish mythology who heralds the death of a family member, usually by wailing, shrieking, or
oh, nice sound effect. I like it.
Yeah, it was pretty good because I had to look over as I was doing it.
Yeah, and I have the solo image up there, so I didn't know you were gonna do it. And I just heard that in the back of my headphones. I'm like, what's behind me? So you got me good, you dirty dog.
Well, I try sometimes. I hope everybody else is hearing it because, like I said, I can't hear it when I do it. So,
oh yeah, that's a good point. That's part of our new technology. Everybody, are you able to hear those noises in the background that I was hearing? Just write in the comment section and let us know, so that way we don't sound like a bunch of idiots. Well, not any more than we normally do. So, anyways, go ahead on with the topic. I cut you off there.
I was going to say, you said about sounding like a bunch of idiots. We are talking about ghosts and monsters.
That's true.
So some people, in some people's eyes, we're idiots.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But
anyways, I cut you off there.
Yeah. So her name is connected to the mythology of mythological important. Les, you want to try that word?
It's mythologically important to, and I'm probably going to butcher this, tumuli or mounds that dot the Irish countryside. And they're also known as, and again, there's an accent on the I in this, a side or a seed, a sid.
I would say
in Old Irish, sid. Yeah, something like that. But there's many varying descriptions of the banshee. Sometimes she has long streaming hair and wears a gray cloak or even a green dress, and her eyes are red from continual weeping. She may be dressed in white with red hair and a ghastly complexion. According to a first-hand account by Anne, Lady Fanshawe, in her memoirs, Lady Wilde and Ancient Legends of Ireland provides another. So sometimes the banshee assumes the form of some sweet singing virgin of the family who died young and has been given the mission by the invisible powers to become the harbinger of coming doom to her mortal kindred. Or she may be seen at night as a shrouded woman crouched beneath the trees, lamenting with veiled face, or flying past in the moonlight, crying bitterly. And the cry of this spirit is mournful beyond all other sounds on earth, and betokens certain death to some members of the family whenever it's heard in the silence of the night. And that's the part that always got me, was just that wailing, screaming cry in the dark, and out of nowhere comes this possessed, ghastly, demonic looking creature.
Yeah,
But
well, I mean,
the sound is what gets me, I think.
yeah, well, yeah, it's always the wailing,
Mm-hmm.
the shrieking, and yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of random, animals out there that can make noises that people may have misinterpreted over the years.
Have you ever heard of Vixen Fox?
No, but you have described to me what it sounds like.
It sounds like a woman screaming in sheer terror. Like if you Google it, like Vixen Fox calls, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It is frightening. When I lived at the farmhouse where we had what I guess could be compared to Sasquatch, I don't know, happenings or whatever. The one night there were people that were renting the barn. They had horses and stuff down there, and they had texted me and called me. They're like, come down here, come down here. I'm like, why? What's the matter? There's something in the woods. There's something in the woods. And so I go down, and it was the two ladies that were down there. I'm like, what is it? What is it? They're like, oh my God, there's something in there. I don't know what it is. It's freaking me out and blah, blah. And then I heard this sound, and luckily I had heard the calls before, so I knew what they were. But to anybody who doesn't or isn't familiar with it, I'm telling you, it sounds like a woman screaming in agony or something. And even a bobcat call is terrifying. A little side note. Do you want to take the next part, or do you want me to? You got it?
Yeah. Okay. In Ireland and parts of Scotland, a traditional part of the mourning process is the keening woman, which basically means to weep or wail. Mm-hmm. And this woman may, in some cases, actually be a professional, and the best keeners would be in high demand. Irish legend speaks of a lament being sung by a fairy woman. She would sing it when a family member died or was about to die. Even if the person had died far away and news of their death had yet to come, so that the wailing of the banshee was the first warning the household had of the death. Mm-hmm. Now that's interesting.
So that wasn't a spirit, that was an actual person.
Yeah, that an actual person who basically, had premonitions of family members' deaths.
That's
and
kind of
go into a little song and dance number right before.
So in a way, kind of like a clairvoyant,
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. It have to be along that psychic line of communication to know somebody. Even 2 villages over back then was about to or just did pass away. That news didn't travel that fast.
Yeah, really.
And she's also said to have predicted deaths. If someone is about to enter a situation where it is unlikely they will come out alive, she will warn people by screaming or wailing, giving rise to a banshee, also being known as a wailing woman. And it is often said that the banshees lament only the descendants of the pure Millicent stock of Ireland, sometimes clarified as surnames with the prefix of O or Mac. And some accounts even state that each family has its own banshee. One account, however, also includes the Geraldines, as they have apparently become more Irish than the Irish themselves. When several banshees appear at once, it indicates the death of someone of great or holy values. The tales sometimes recount that the woman, though called a fairy, was a ghost, often of a specific murdered woman or a mother who had died in childbirth.
Oh,
Now,
that's bad.
I got goosebumps. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
that's
kind of always, you know, I guess the Irish mythology, the banshee, like you had said earlier, is always one of those, just kind of scary. You just think about that, like that shriek and wailing, and to know that's the signal of impending doom.
yeah. You're just hoping. I hope it's not shrieking at me.
Oh, you just looking like you shrieking at me? Are you
Yeah,
shrieking at me?
him, her, me. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's like the night at the Roxbury where they're like
yeah,
me, him. What?
yeah. Hopefully, it's the other person at that point, but you never know. But yeah, I always like I guess the Irish folklore always kind of resonates because it is shared, like with the Scottish and the Welsh, and even the English themselves have adopted some of this, or have tell the stories because of the intermarrying of people. So it's always kind of gets me, I guess.
Hmm.
All the stories, Finn McCool,
Yeah.
who threw a piece of Ireland into the ocean and made the Isle of Man. You have Balor, who's when his eye opens, signals the end of the world, which is kind of interesting. We got to talk about Balor someday.
Yeah. Why not?
We have to talk about Balor.
Yeah,
You know the story of Balor.
that's true. Well, this other part is kind of interesting. Now I'm gonna butcher this one. The Ya Brian or Brain Banshee is thought to be named Abel and the ruler of 25 other banshees who would also always be at her attendance. And it's possible that this particular story is the source of the idea that the wailing of numerous banshees signifies the death of a great person. So that's kind of interesting, where they would kind of get together, band together to pronounce the death of somebody of great importance. Kind of neat. But most, though not all, surnames associated with the Banshees have, like Chad had said, the O or Mac prefix. That is surnames of the Goidelic origin, indicating a family native to the insular Celtic lands rather than those of the Norse, English, or Norman invaders. So it's kind of interesting how they would kind of associate invading names as well. But accounts reach as far back as 1380 to the publication of the. I'm not going to say the actual name of it because I can't pronounce it, but it's translated as Triumphs of Turlough by Sean MacCraith, and he mentions of banshees. The mentions of banshees can also be found in Norman literature of that time as well. So I think that's kind of neat how it's kind of a melding of different kind of beliefs, but it all has the same premise. Kind of like what we were talking about before, where it's kind of ironic how, you know, civilizations that are kind of spread throughout the world that in those days would not have had communication, ironically have same mythologies or legends, kind of like the Egyptians and the Aztec or the Incans, or what are the Mayans, whatever they
Fine.
were. Yeah, where the pyramids were very similar. Their hieroglyphs were very similar, and the pictographs, the way they depicted these beings from the skies or beings from the heavens and stuff like that, it's eerily similar how they kind of correlate.
Yeah, my only thing would be, if a banshee's going to come for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping it's more than one. Yeah, I want to feel a little important when you know what I mean? Like if you're going to go out, you kind of want to feel important on the way.
Yeah, it's just one real old rickety one. It's like,
Yeah.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
what I get.
That's what I get Great, thanks.
Christ, just take me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't have a Mac, prefix in any of my genetic lines, so thank God. Or a Mick.
That's true. Thank God.
Now, there is a story that comes out of that area where the wailing of one of these banshees is said to be able to shatter glass.
Hmm.
And in Scottish folklore, a similar creature known as the Bean Nye or Bean Night Chain, meaning little washerwoman or little washer at the ford, and is seen washing the bloodstained clothes or armor of those who are about to die. In Welsh folklore, there's also a similar creature known as the Hag of the Mist. So, the Banshee, definitely an interesting, topic, especially around this time of year, with being Halloween let's all pretend it's still Halloween.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we haven't even hit Guy Fawkes Day, so technically it's still the season.
That's true.
And so, this is definitely, and again, now those cultures are, close enough to have shared stories, but the little differences in their stories, the woman, the little washerwoman, washing the armor or bloodstained clothing of people who are about to die.
Yeah.
The banshee signaling people about to die. So it's definitely,
yeah. It's kind of like you said. It's all a premonition in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, and it's all a female-based apparition or clairvoyant, or it's always these women entities that bring the impending doom, and they're all linked in some way. So
imagine that, women and impending doom.
I did not say that.
delete.
Right?
Oh,
boy.
Well, it's better than some of the things you've said on this show.
Oh, shut up. Don't bring that back.
Yep, I won't.
Yeah. Moonjoy says on his bucket list is to do an overnight stay at a haunted castle in Ireland. My bucket list is just to get to Ireland, and not staying in a castle, just get there. And I think if I had the chance, I'd stay, because actually, speaking of Destination Truth, if anybody remembers, we always talk about Josh Gates in a lot of our shows. I'm a huge Josh Gates fan, and one of my favorite shows was Destination Truth that he hosted. Excuse me. And one of the episodes is they were looking for was it leprechauns or fairies or something over in Ireland, and they were in this area where I guess it was a circle patch of earth that nothing grew on, and when they thought it was a portal, one of their crew members was lifted off the ground. But they also went to a castle in Ireland, which has like a real nasty history to it, bloody history, and supposedly the castle was haunted or guarded by a banshee, and that was one of the things that they had gone. I wish I couldn't find the name of the freaking castle, but yeah, if I had a chance, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember that episode. It's a very good episode. Oh, I would definitely spend a night in a haunted castle.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Because we kind of talked about that before. Because I mean, for anybody who goes paranormal investigating or anything like that. Now, granted, there are times when some weird things happen, but 99.9% of the time, nothing happens. We go to all these different locations. We set up all this equipment. We do everything textbook style, and we even kind of stray out of the norm. We think outside the box. Nothing happens. It's not like on TV, like with Ghost Adventures. And again, I'm not knocking. I love Ghost Adventures, but it's like every episode, there's like one thing after the other after the other. Now, granted, they're in there all night long, and a lot of places that you pay for, you don't get the entire night. You get so many hours, but you don't get anything. We've investigated residential areas where, it wasn't a pay to play place and nothing happened. But then again, on the other hand, with a previous group that I was with, we investigated a house locally, and it was one of the most active locations we'd ever been in. Now, it wasn't like what you see on TV, crazy off the wall stuff, but we were getting EVPs, we were getting K2 responses. It was very active, and we did sweeps of the area down to the basement. We saw where all the wiring ran. We saw where the higher power sources were. And it's just really odd stuff had taken place. But I'm not really afraid to go to a haunted castle or haunted hotel or haunted whatever. Now, granted, if I was in there by myself, yeah, I'd feel a little creeped out. But if I were in there with a crew or something like that, honestly, anybody who has ever investigated with me, I fall asleep at every single location. So I'll probably fall asleep in that one too.
Yeah, if you actually look at our Twitter, at Xplorers group, you'll actually see a little video of Les sleeping at the Haldeman Mansion.
And that's right when we got that odd sound.
Yep.
As strange as it is, I was literally, now in my defense, I was horribly sick during that investigation. So, I mean, you could vouch for me on that. And I was just exhausted. But yeah, you can see I'm pretty much stone cold sleeping, And then we caught that sound and woke me right up.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, there's actually another video clip of you sleeping.
Yeah, there's too many.
But yeah, we always, like Les and I were talking the other day, you always see this. For $1 million, would you spend the night in this place? And like Les and I said, we pay money to spend time in those places. Yeah, give me $1 million, no problem. Because most likely,
go ahead.
Like most likely, nothing's really going to happen.
No,
and even if it does,
unless it's faked.
Yeah. And if it does, well, hopefully we catch it on the equipment and have something to show for it.
And make even more money off it.
Yeah.
Or the potential of.
Yeah, I always love
Joe.
That. They always get, pass around online on these different ghost groups and all that. Would you stay in this place for for $2 million? Would you stay in this haunted asylum
for the entire night?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Hell yeah, because usually we're paying to get into those places.
Yeah, and I pretty much can sleep anywhere. So
same here, brother. Same here. All right, so what's the next thing? We kind of started segueing into it. Well, this is the Welsh.
I actually looked up the pronunciation of this today, so I'm going to give it a try. The sea hyrith, which sea high. It means muscle, tendon, flesh, and skeleton. So a thing of mere flesh and bone. It's a specter type of wraith, and it's a ghostly spirit in Welsh mythology. It's a disembodied moaning voice that sounds before a person's death. So this is very similar to a banshee in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But this doesn't have a physical form a lot of times, as it's more of just a moaning, a sound, people hear, which, is again quite interesting. And the legend associated with the sea hyrith is the area in the river around the river Tywin in eastern Dyfr, as well as the coast of Glamorganshire. We definitely need Andy when we do these.
I know.
Welsh, because
you should have been a third mic tonight.
Yeah, because a lot of my Welsh people never spoke the native language. So
Yeah, I have Welsh in me. I don't know. You
yeah,
know? I wish.
yeah, I don't know if my grandmother and my grandfather had Welsh blood, and my stepfather is Welsh.
Mhm.
But I don't think he speaks the language. So if he does, it's another hidden talent that we didn't know about yet.
There you go.
And the noise is said to be doleful and disagreeable, like the
Mhm.
groans or sighs of someone deathly ill. And to sound 3 times, growing weaker and fainter each time, as a threefold warning before the person expires. Along the Glamorganshire coast, the Sir Hiraeth is said to be heard before a shipwreck, accompanied by a corpse light.
Corpse light.
Like the Irish, what's that?
Corpse light. What's that?
Yeah, corpse. And I might be butchering this one because I've read about them before, but it's kind of like one of those random lights that just kind of float.
Mhm.
People kind of a lot of times see them in cemeteries, and they're just kind of like a floating light that has no source,
Mhm.
and they just kind of similar to the light that came down the hallway when we lived in Minersville.
Oh yeah.
Kind of along that same lines, like it's just a ball of light. They're sometimes described as red or green or white, and they just kind of a lot of times they're they're called cemetery lights in some definitions of them.
Mhm.
Like some of the stories I've read where they just they kind of interchange the names back and forth.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
you're probably right. Just a
yeah,
spectral light or an orb.
yeah, yeah, basically, but not an orb in the sense of the horrible, flash reflections on dust
Yeah,
or
dust
IR
mode.
light reflection.
Mhm.
This is more of an actual like light, like a
Mhm.
physical light that people see.
Gotcha.
Now, of course, like I said earlier, this is very similar to the Irish Banshee. And it's also very similar to again, I did my research on how to pronounce this, Granty Ribbon, which I know is not right, but it's close enough for me.
That's good. That's good.
Now, the Granty Ribbon and the Sihirith also sounds for Welsh natives dying far from home.
Hmm.
So this could, again, that almost goes back to the thing with the Banshee about that woman who knew of or about the time other family members would be passing over.
Mhm.
So that's definitely, again, how much of this is shared mythology because of the closeness of the cultures.
Mhm.
But definitely, some interesting little things there. And of course, you can find some books out there. I have a book. I don't know if you guys can see this or not.
Haunted Britain and Ireland.
Yeah, I got this book at a used bookstore for like $3, and
Mhm.
it's very interesting because it breaks it down by parts of the country, and like it breaks it down Ireland, Scotland, and the main land of England and Wales. But then it also breaks it down by town, so you can look up different little stories. Like I gotta hit up Andy about the Blackpool by where he lives one of these days. I'm just
Mhm.
waiting to broach that subject with him.
Yeah. I'm sure he'd be happy to share. We'll bring him on the show and talk about some different kind of Celtic Isle lore and legend, because I believe he said he's from Wales, right?
Yeah, he's of Welsh descent.
Mhm.
Well, when I go to see him next summer, I'm gonna make him take me to this place. Be
You're
like,
gonna make
Andy, you have to take me. I can't drive on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I do it now, but that's just by accident most days. That's why people should not text and drive.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I have a really interesting story, and it was actually shared to me by a friend. And it's doesn't really fit with the Banshee legends, but again, we wanted to tell some, ghost stories and kind of segue between some stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
So this story comes from one of my friends from when I worked at the newspaper, and it happened while she was running a route several years ago. And I actually wanted to get a picture of this intersection, counting I drive through it like 3 or 4 times a week. I just didn't have a red light long enough to take a picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's a T intersection. It's where 2 kind of country highways intersect, and it has a very weird 2-stage green light.
Mm-hmm.
So you get you stop way back on the road before the intersection, and then you get a green light and a second green light for you to make your turn.
That's
But
confusing.
yeah, I'll show it to you next time you're down. It's not really that bad. You kind of the lights turn at the same time, so
Okay.
you can kind of go through it. But what happened was she had pulled up to the red light connecting these 2 country highways, just outside of the town once known as the Devil's Kitchen.
Mm.
It was raining heavily when she noticed a man dressed in 1970s formal wear.
Mm.
The suit was very out of place for current day, but not super unusual for this area. And he seemed to be pacing around, waiting for the light to turn. And of course, she, felt bad for this poor man stuck out in the rain. But that's when she noticed he didn't seem to be affected by the heavily falling rain. And by not affected, he didn't try to bundle himself up inside of his suit or pull his coat up over his head. And just as the light turned green, her headlights came into a better viewing position, and the man had vanished.
Mm.
But the interesting thing is, where could he have went? There are woods to the left. He was not there. And they're not very thick woods, so you can see a good distance into them.
Right, right.
And to the right of this area where he was pacing is a gigantic, probably 3-mile open field.
Jeez.
So just remember to keep your eyes open during those early morning rides. You never know what you might see.
How about it? Jeez.
And actually, I've actually pulled up to this intersection several times in the very early morning, and several times while it has been heavily raining in the early morning.
Yeah, I'm just looking outside. I'm like, oh, it's heavily raining right now.
It was raining down here pretty bad this afternoon, and I actually had to come through that intersection, but it was daytime, so I wasn't too scared.
Right, right.
But I actually have a couple of times rolled up on that at night and been like looking where she said the person was and just like staring at that spot. Like, if I see somebody dressed in a 1970s leisure suit, I'm blowing this light.
Yeah, really.
This happened just a couple of years ago. So like in the story, you think about, a 70s leisure suit, that's really out of place. But around here, it's not really that unusual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of like oldies groups and stuff like that. So it could have been like a performer, and there's a lot of like fire halls and stuff in this area. So it didn't really, it was out of place, but it was also not that unusual.
Plausible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, kind of those spectral beings that you see along the roads and stuff, that there's a lot of stories like that. I remember one time my dad was telling me when he was younger. I don't know for anybody in the Schuylkill County area, the county Chad and I grew up in, there's a road between St. Clair and Monterey City called the Burma Road.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Well, one time my dad was driving down the Burma, and apparently there's a story of the woman in white on the Burma Road, where there's this woman in a long white dress and she walks along the side of the road. And my dad had said he had heard the story before and never thought anything of it. And one night he was driving down the Burma, just cruising along. All of a sudden, there's this woman in white on the side of the road, walking on the side of the road. He got a few, maybe a few yards or whatever in front of her, stopped, looked back in the rear view with the tail lights illuminating the road, and he said there was nobody there. And it was late at night. It was pitch black, and the Burma Road has no street lights. There's no lighting whatsoever. So why would a woman just randomly jump into the bushes to get out of the way of a vehicle or anything? Now, granted, I mean, maybe she thought, oh, is this guy going to try and kidnap me or whatever? Maybe she did try and hide, but he said just with when he saw her and he's looking in the rear view, he stops and he looks back, and then she's gone. So it was just too coincidental and too quick for that to happen. I don't know, but there was a lot of people that seen the woman in white on the Burma Road, and my dad was fortunately one of them. But I've never
we discussed that during our Phantom Hitchhiker episode. I remember us talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kelly, what area are you in? I just read the comment. Yeah. I'm just hoping everybody's okay in that area.
Yeah, because she's not that far from me. I hope it doesn't come up here. Or she used to be not far from me. I don't know where she lives now. But it's pretty nasty outside. So I hope I don't get swept up in a tornado when I try and go back in the house.
Well, just keep the feed going if it happens.
Yeah. Keep going. Oh boy.
That will go viral. So
oh, God, yeah.
Now just don't shoot it on a Sony Handycam, okay?
Yeah, I know. We need something professional, like a 1980s Panasonic video camera.
Yeah, sometimes you hear about these big announcements about to happen, and you get all excited to hear them. And they don't happen. They just don't happen.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts.
How many times do we hear what story, Kelly? The Burma Road lady? Or the lady in white? I'll wait.
Yeah.
So what's the next the next stop on the story train today?
Well, we're going to talk about the Hag of the Mist. And this is a monstrous Welsh spirit in the shape of a hideously ugly woman. A Welsh saying to describe a woman without good looks goes, yeah, ye
don't even
may
try.
More slog guarantee ribbon. Which this is seriously, we need
just read the translation. She's ugly as a whatever the thing is that you said before.
Guarantee ribbon.
Guarantee ribbon. There you go.
With a harpy-like appearance, unkept hair, and withered arms with leathery. If I look at the camera, I can't say it. Yeah. Wings, long black teeth, and a pale corpse-like feature.
Don't play charades with Chad. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm not good. Honestly, I'm not good at that game. I get very angry. I also don't like playing Monopoly. I also get very angry. Now, the legend of this and the kind of folklore behind it is she approaches the window of a person about to die by night and calls their name, or travels invisibly beside them and utters her cry when they approach a stream or a crossroad, and is sometimes depicted as washing her hands there.
That's creepy.
Yeah. Now, some of the things they will wail or shriek, they've been reported to do this, would be like my husband, or my child, my little child. Though they say, and again, this is another one of those where sometimes it has a male's voice and will cry, my wife, my wife. If it is death that is coming, the name of the doomed one to die is supposed to be heard in her shrill tenor.
Mm.
Often invisible, she can sometimes be seen at a crossroads, or a stream when the mist rises, which is kind of creepy because I do a lot of early morning drive through a lot of country areas where there are streams and a lot of fog.
Ugh, yeah. Can you imagine if you're just cruising along and you just see a face materialize from it?
Well, I really wish I had the Dark Shadows music when you did that.
What about it?
And some speculation has been asserted that the apparition may have once been a water deity
Hmm.
or an aspect of the Welsh goddess Done. She is the wife of a Fagadoo. Honestly, that's how it's spelled.
It looks like it's spelled that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually have a. How would you say that?
A fagadoo. Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
it looks like.
I'm sure there is probably some kind of very Welsh pronunciation that we're missing, but
Right. It's like I said before, like Andy, when he was talking about some of the lines, like, it's probably something like that, where it's like this jarbled, throaty enunciation.
yeah. Now I have a story about an old hag.
I'm sure you have many.
Oh, do you want to play that game?
Moving along, tell your story.
Now the only thing is nobody died, so just that's not going to be part of the story.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good that nobody died.
Sorry, you just made me chuckle a little inside.
That's good.
So my friend and his now ex-wife have two sons, and they lived in this old farmhouse out in Perry County, which is, for anybody not familiar with Pennsylvania, it's out past the state capital of Harrisburg. And like this farmhouse, the driveway was about 3/4 of a mile
Nice.
to the house, and like it was like it went downhill to the house, and then it was wooded behind the house and went up a hill, and then it was more farmland around it. This is the same house where one of those paraglider things crashed and the guy died. Oh, somebody did die. Not involved with not involved with that story, but somebody did actually die there.
There you go.
But
and not to
this
laugh
house,
about the unfortunate, it's just funny that we said nobody did, but they did.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know him, so
God.
I said before I'm a horrible human being.
All right, go on.
But now this farmhouse, I stayed there several times by myself to dog sit and stuff like that, and I always said it reminded me of like the farmhouse in Night of the Living Dead.
Oh.
And there was a big old barn by the house, and then little like
the age of the house. Like, was it like old property and just kind of renovated over the years, or is it like a newer build?
It was old. The house was renovated several times over the years. It was expanded and stuff like that. The barn itself, the original barn, was 1800s built.
Nice. So there's a lot of history there, and that area down near Harrisburg and whatnot, just like where the Haldeman is, a lot of history. I mean, going back to the country's infancy and stuff like that. So there's a lot of 1700 structures still back in that area.
Yeah. And this house they were living in, the way like you came in the front door, and to your right was the kitchen and like little dining room area, and to the left was the living room, and the stairwell was like right in front of the door to go upstairs. Well, when you went through the living room, there was another little room behind that. It was kind of like they used it as a kid's playroom. Well, it had 3 windows, So when you were looking at it from the living room, there was a window directly in front of you, one to the left and one to the right.
Mm-hmm.
So their son, Dylan, was playing when he was little, and he was about maybe 6 or 7. So his brother was probably around 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just playing back there like a little kid with his toys and stuff like that, and never had a problem. It was evening,
Mm-hmm.
and he came running into the living room and jumped on his dad. Like jumped, like flying across the room, jumped on him
Like in fright.
in fright,
Mm-hmm.
crying, like hysterical crying, could not catch his breath.
Mm.
He finally calms down, and they finally ask him, to get the story out of him. He said he was sitting there playing, and he heard something tap on the window. Now, this is night, like evening, dark out evening.
Yeah.
He heard something tap on the window.
Oh gosh.
And at first, he didn't, like, he just, it's that old house, windows make noise, that kind of thing. He's little, he's playing, he's not really, focused on, oh my God, what's that? And he said, like, the tap got louder. And he thought he heard somebody say his name.
Oh God.
Now, his parents legitimately were no more than 7 feet from him.
Yeah.
They heard nothing. Didn't hear the tap on the window, didn't hear anything, nobody called his name. He said when he looked up at the window, he saw the ugliest old woman with like the wrinkly, like almost decomposing face with like a grayish like cloak around her face, but he could see like the like straggly gray hair, and her face was all like distorted. And that's when he got up and ran in the room.
That's kind of weird because we lived on that farmhouse, and again, I bring that house up all the time because on the property and in the house we had some weird things happen. And my oldest daughter, when she was 2 or 3 ish, she wouldn't sleep in the room that we had for her in the house because she said there was an old woman, but she described her more of like a shadow person, but there were vague details. Like she would say, "Oh, it's an old woman that is hunched over in the corner of my room, and she stares at me at night." And she's like, "I don't want to go in there. I don't want to go in there." And it went on for probably a year. And finally, I was like, "You know what? You don't need to sleep in there at all." Between what used to happen with the baby monitors, with those weird noises that used to come through, and her, seeing this crouched up old lady in the corner, a shadowy old lady, I was like, forget about it. And even when I was young, but I was probably pre-teen to early teens, I saw what looked like my mom come into our bedroom at night and actually reached over. I was on the top bunk at the time and reached over the railing, and I could see straight through, like it had my mom's hair, but the face was all black. There was like nothing, and the hands on the railing, like it almost looked like they decomposed in front of my eyes. Like it was effed up. Like it was really, really messed up. So I don't know, maybe there is something there with all these different legends of these creepy women.
Yes, creepy women. Just leave it at that. Good one.
Yeah. Well,
now,
creepy women, specters, or premonition kind of through a female form.
Yeah. Now, that house out there in Perry County had some weird stuff happen over the years on the property.
Just with them or with other people?
The family who lived there before them had
Mm.
some odd stuff happen. Now they never like said, "Oh, we saw the old woman" or anything like that, but there were, for explanation purposes, um, ghostly little Amish kids.
Oh, that is creepy.
Yeah, especially when you watch it happen at lunchtime on a sunny day while sitting by a window.
What happened?
We were training dogs to kind of give you an idea who I was with.
Uh-huh.
We were training dogs. So that property was great because it was so big. You could do tracking, trailing. We could do, detection work, bite work. So we decided to take a break. We'd
Right.
make lunch. We were sitting there. And when you sat at the kitchen table, there was a window like that faced the front of the house, and there was a window that faced towards the old barn. We're sitting there, and I'm sitting facing the window that looks at the barn.
Mm-hmm.
The other person is sitting looking out the window that faces the driveway.
Right.
And just sitting there talking about the dogs and everything. All of a sudden, little kids go running past the first window, in front of the second window, and run to the barn. Only problem is they were little girls. They were dressed in very plain gray outfits, like dresses, very long dresses, very high necks, gray.
Mm-hmm.
Had the little bonnets on, and they run straight to the barn.
Now, are you sure it wasn't like actual?
Well, let me finish,
Oh, okay.
because this will actually 100% prove it wasn't anybody.
Okay.
The German Shepherd that was sitting next to me by the window ran to the window that I was looking out of, started barking.
Uh-huh.
We're like, who are these? We thought they were like real little kids.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
whose kids are these? So we go out the front door, start walking towards the barn,
Mm-hmm.
and we're yelling, hey, kids, what are you doing?
Hey.
Hey, kids, what are you doing? We're, and the person with me was also a police officer.
Right. Right.
So we are like armed, have 3 dogs that do bite work with us.
Mm-hmm.
So we send the shepherd to go corral the kids, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the shepherd takes off through the front entry of the barn. You hear him go around the barn, and you see him come out the bottom door of the barn. Doesn't find these kids. Now, this dog could track and trail for a good 1.5 miles. I've seen him do a 6-mile track, get within 100 yards of the person at 6 miles.
Right.
That's a lot for a dog in the summertime to do.
Yeah.
I've worked with him in buildings, like warehouse buildings and stuff like that, where I hid with the bite suit and he found me. Couldn't find anybody. So what? The person I was with goes through the front door. I go through the bottom door, and we clear the barn. There were no kids. We talked to that person. Now it's his ex-wife. We talked to her when she gets home from work, because at this point, we're both looking at each other like, what was that?
Yeah, really.
Like, where did they come from? Why were they there? And she's like, oh, yeah, that has happened here before. She's like, I've sent Stryker out there several times chasing them. He can't catch them. They always ran towards the barn and into the barn, but they were never in there. There was never any adults around. to describe how big this property is, like I said, it was 3/4 of a mile from the road to the house on their driveway.
Mm-hmm.
The nearest house to them was 3.5 miles on the other side of the road.
Wow.
So there weren't like little kids in the neighborhood. There wasn't any Amish people living around there.
That's what I was gonna say, because it's not that far out from Amish areas.
No, and there are Amish people that live out in Perry County,
Yeah.
but not out there. And why would three random, you know, 2, 3 random little Amish girls be running around in somebody else's yard?
Yeah, that's true. Because they do run around in neighboring houses within their community, but I mean
Yeah.
that would be a farm that they knew wasn't part of their community. And,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They wouldn't, because they don't generally mix with the English.
Yeah, they don't.
You
They
know?
generally, the kids are especially told not to.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I've went to a few auctions run by the Amish, and the kids are very polite, but it's like pulling teeth to get them to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, legitimately, I held one of them down and pulled his teeth until he started talking.
Jeez.
I told you I'm not a nice person.
I don't even know you anymore.
Did you ever?
I thought I did.
Well, you were wrong.
Hey, your story's giving Moon Joey a heart attack. His cat got freaked out by the story and jumped on him.
Sorry. I had a cat when I was in college that when I would fall asleep on the couch would jump off the top of the couch and land on my chest. That used to yeah, it was her.
Mm-hmm.
Used to startle, like, because I would be asleep and I'd get whacked in the chest. It would, startle and scare me half to death every time it happened. I knew it was going to happen if I fell asleep on the couch, but every time it happened, I shot straight up and was like, panicked. But yeah, that house out there had some weird stuff over the years, and just, they moved. Oh, they probably lived there for about 3 years, and they finally moved out of there. Now, they didn't move out because, like, the house was haunted or anything like that. They just, job opportunities and stuff like that, they moved. But
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. Oh, excuse me. If I saw a bunch of spectral kids running around my property, I don't know if I'd want to stick around too long.
yeah, I mean, well, it was, like I said, we like legit thought they were real kids.
Right. Because why would you think otherwise during the broad daylight? You know what I mean? You're just sitting there, you see 3 little kids. Your mind's going to rationally make sense of that,
Well, and I mean, looking at them, except for like the Amish type clothing, they looked real. Like, they didn't look like, like they always describe ghosts and stuff like that. They looked like just real little omelets running through the yard. But like when we went into the barn, cleared the barn, had the dog go in first, and that dog was amazing.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anybody in there. And then to talk to his wife, and she's like, I've seen it a couple of times here. But their son had, I think, the scariest encounter in that house. And that whole,
The face of the
old
window.
Yeah. Well, like he said, it wasn't. I've talked to him when he got older about it, and he said it wasn't like just a face. He could see like the shoulders and like the start of the body that would be like, visible in the window.
Yeah.
And they actually went outside and looked to make sure somebody wasn't like peeping in the windows. And they never saw anybody or found anybody. And again, they all, had at least 2 working dogs in their house at all times. So if somebody was out there,
dogs, and I tell you, I would not mess around those dogs.
Yeah, but they definitely, like that type of thing I think that would be enough reason for me to move out of a house
Oh
if
yeah.
I could
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah.
You know, looking out the window and seeing some old distorted hag just peering in at you.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the one time when I was little. This isn't really a horror story or ghost story or paranormal story, but it is a Halloween story. Do you mind if I share it?
The listener provided one?
No. It's a personal story.
Oh
It's
yeah,
not really.
go ahead.
Like I said, it's not a paranormal story. But my mom and my stepdad were having a Halloween party,
Mhm,
and this was back while they still both worked at the sheriff's department.
mhm,
So it was a lot of like sheriff's deputies and friends and lawyers and all this stuff. And they had it at our house in Cursona.
mhm,
And they had a friend who used to do, I don't want to say parlor tricks because I think that would be disrespectful to the person. He's since passed away. And he actually got me kind of interested in learning more and more about the paranormal.
mhm,
Um, but what they did was he went to the front door. We had a front door and a side door to the house, which was basically the back door, but it came out on the side of the house instead of the actual back of the house. So he came up to the front door, knocked on the door, but you could run around to the side of the house and hide. So he knocked on the door. My mom and all are like, go answer the door. It's probably somebody coming for the party.
yeah, yeah.
So I go open the door. There's nobody there. So I'm like, Mom, there's nobody here. But I actually heard somebody knocking on the door.
Right.
So I closed the door. And back then we locked it. We had a red front door too.
Mhm.
I don't know. Yeah, I see a red door. I want to paint it black. But my stepfather, for some reason, painted our front door red. I think that it actually is a Welsh tradition for some reason, I think. But so I close the door, I lock it. There's another knock on the door. So my mom's like, go see who it is, let him in. So I go to the front door, unlock the door, open it. There's nobody there. So I yelled at my mom. I'm like, there's nobody there. She goes, well, go around the side of the house and see if they're coming to the back door and have them come in through the front.
Mhm.
So, of course, I was a scaredy cat as a child, hence my mother's nickname for me, Chicken Shit Chad. I go like walking, and we had a bright light on our porch, but I'm like walking close to the house, and I get to the corner, and I like peek around the corner, and I see this thing that is 6 foot tall, holding a machete, and has a distorted face come running at me.
Oh my god.
I ran back in the house, didn't close the door, ran straight into my mom and just like grabbed her and was like, ah! It was their friend who he actually gave me a spirit needle that night, which was pretty cool for
Oh,
scaring
nice.
me.
Nice.
Yeah. I think he had something to do with the store in Jim Thorpe, the
Oh, Magic
Emporium.
Touch?
No, the
Oh, oh,
Emporium.
oh, oh. Well, really?
Yeah, I think he had something to do when they first opened, like
It
with the
wasn't Barrett.
ownership.
It wasn't Barrett, was it?
No,
Okay.
no, but he was from that area.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I said, he used to do a lot of the like like I said, I don't want to call them parlor tricks because I learned a lot from this person. He
Right,
used to be
right.
able to levitate tables.
Oh, wow.
I witnessed him that night levitate a table. And in such a way that like, oh yeah, you could like put glue on your fingertips and like raise the table up and it would
Right.
stick to your hands.
I mean,
No,
strong ass glue.
I watched 4 adults with their hands on a table as I stood next to him, watch the table start rocking. back and forth and side to side, and all of a sudden start lifting straight up in the air.
Wow.
Yeah. That like I said, I don't want to call it parlor tricks because I really do actually have a lot of respect for that person. And like I said, he has passed away, but he still taught me a lot about that stuff. And like I said, he gave me that spirit needle when I was a kid, which was like the neatest thing ever.
Right. That's kind of reminds me of that. Remember when would you have parties as kids, light as a feather, stiff as a board, and you just hold two fingers and you raise people up. We've done that before. And actually we lifted my brother Mike.
Yeah, but he is like light as a feather when he was little.
Yeah, I mean, back then he was, yeah.
Couldn't do that to him now, I bet.
No, he's much more solid.
So, do you want to take this last reader submission?
Yeah. We have
listener
another
submission.
story. Yeah, we have another interesting story that was provided to us by one of our listeners, and I'll read it verbatim. It says, "In the historical landmark marking the Quona Quarry in St. Augustine, Florida, my wife and we investigate together, and she's sensitive. We're just starting to get set up a static video equipment when my wife explained out loud, 'Oh my God, do you see that?' I hadn't seen it as I was intently involved in a static camera tripod. I looked up too late. My wife stated that she saw a person in a monk's robe with a hood approximately 30 yards away and walking away from our location." What is that? Hey, are you playing music? Because I can hear the music in the background.
Sorry, like the soundboard actually popped up a commercial all of a sudden.
I was like, I say you, shake it out. What the hell is that? But anyway, she stated he was only visible from the waist up and faded out from visibility after about 5 seconds. This was just the start to our interesting evening there. The sun was setting quickly, and we started to walk through when we heard multiple loud voices talking just to our left, coming from the swamp. It was almost dark, and since we were in an isolated area, we were startled to find someone unseen was nearby. Please know that the swamp is literally an impassable, deep, boggy area next to the quarry on one side. They couldn't have gotten past us to be there, nor be able to walk there. And although we couldn't make it out, what they were saying as the voices kept getting closer, it had a threatening sound to it. I pushed my wife behind me and pulled out my knife that I carry with me, expecting to have to defend us. The voices suddenly stopped. After our heartbeat settled back down to normal, we proceeded to our investigation. It was now hard to see with just ambient light remaining in the quarry. I then felt as though I had walked through a giant spider web and partially freaked out, flailing my arms and my head. I said to my wife, I just walked through a spider web and it's all over my head. The only problem was I was in a wide open space with no vegetation of any kind near me. Well, I was just with my daughter earlier today before the show, and she was taking her horseback riding lessons, and she had her first fall today, which really sucked. But anyway, I was standing there in the open round pen, nothing around us, and I had spider webs all over the back of my neck, and they were crawling on me. So spiders can actually shoot out some web and float through the air currents on them. So that's a possibility. But anyways, he says, my wife said, it can't be in your hair. You're wearing a hat. There's a commonly held belief that when a spirit has touched you, it feels like a feather or spider web touching you. I then asked my wife to walk to the opposite side of the quarry, and I would video her with the possibility of capturing some kind of anomaly that she seems to usually be drawn to her presence. A review of the video revealed no visible phenomena. However, we captured an EVP on the recording saying with vocal tone, "Excusing me." This was incredible historical validation because the quarry used to be worked by slaves, and it sounded like a male voice speaking in an interesting type of dialect, acting like I was in his way. Historical fact, the Caquina extracted in this, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Extracted in this quarry was hauled by oxen-drawn cart to the nearby waterway and used to build the famous Spanish fort there, the Castillo de San Marcos. The reason I share that bit of information is that one of my video recorders that I placed in a spot near the old path of the quarry, I captured the most amazing EVP of my life, and what I feel is probably the history of EVPs. That I feel is probably in the history of EVPs. I'm sorry. We didn't hear it with our own ears, but after the excuse me time frame, this audible recorder captured the unmistakable sound of a wagon getting louder as it approached us at a slow speed, and the sound volume diminishing as it passed by. We were the only people in that quarry. There is no outside sound that penetrates there, and there is no way to debunk what we captured. So that's pretty cool, considering the quarry was probably mined, like he said, by slaves. And obviously back then they didn't have any motorized vehicles or anything like that. So it was all horse drawn or oxen drawn carriages and whatnot. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is. That actually is kind of interesting. I have in my possession a story. I was going to actually use it tonight, but I decided not to. I'm going to save it for a little while and hopefully actually get the person to join us on the show one night. Mm-hmm. But they are a psychic medium, I guess. Mm-hmm. And they had dealt with a property here in Virginia where you can still see the old slaves' quarters. Mm-hmm. And they were called to this house to investigate. And when they were there, they saw what would have been the spirit of slaves mm-hmm. in the field, like looking at them. And when they communicated in such a version of the language that would have been time period specific for slaves. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot in that, like type dialect of the language. Yeah. Funny thing was, I wasn't allowed to run that story in the newspaper when I did my scary story contest years ago for tickets to St. Albans, because it was racially insensitive. Mm. The same newspaper that printed a cartoon of Officer Friendly, which, if anybody's interested, which is a horribly racist cartoon or anti-cop cartoon, and you can find it online, but they were the same people that published that cartoon. But yeah, I had an argument with the editor basically stating, like, that's how slaves would have spoke English. They wouldn't have spoke like you and I do nowadays. They would have been bits and choppy and would have had words in the wrong place at times. Mm-hmm. But I lost that argument. But the editor did come to me the next day and apologize, because I was right. She was wrong. But yeah, so that's interesting. I've also heard other places where, now not captured necessarily on EVP recorders, but where people have heard the sounds of like horse-drawn carriages coming up, like old-fashioned driveways. Mm-hmm. There's a mansion in South Boston, which is a little bit south of where I'm at, and the hotel manager for the place heard the one day the sound of the wagon wheels and horse hooves coming up the stone driveway.
Wow.
So it was the middle of the day, like early day, something like that. It was sunny out though. Yeah. And she was like, wow, that's pretty neat, because this is a 1700s or early 1800s built mansion.
Yeah.
That was, at one point, it was the fourth largest plantation in America. It's,
Mhm.
I mean, it's humongous. But she thought, oh, this is pretty cool. Somebody's bringing a horse and wagon up here. So she stood on these big front steps and is standing there, and it's getting louder. But you can see down the driveway. There's nobody coming up the driveway, but the sound of the wagon wheels and the horse hooves
Yeah.
are actually like they're approaching her. They are getting louder every time she hears them.
Hmm.
And she only worked there a short time when that happened to her.
Yeah.
I don't know if that person still works there, but I know they had practically had a nervous breakdown that day.
Yeah, I guess so. Speaking of plantations and whatnot, that one that's up the street from you, the historical building,
Mm-hmm.
we've got to investigate that. So the next time I come down to your place, which the kids have been harping on me to come down to see you, because all they want to do is hang out with you and your chickens. But we got to come down and we got to get into that place.
Well, the funny thing, I don't know if you all heard that. The funny thing, Ghost Hunters wanted to do that building for their final season, and the director of the Historical Preservation Society for there
Mm-hmm.
said, when he was contacted, he's like, well, what do you mean come here and paranormal investigate? Oh, well, we've been told it's haunted and we've been told all these stories. And he was like, there are no ghosts here. You're not allowed here. Stop contacting us.
Yeah.
But there is a slave cemetery across the street, which is public domain, and the family cemetery, which is public domain. And you can actually walk through the building and take tours of it. So nobody says you can't take equipment with you when you do it.
Well, what I would like for you to do is take some business cards and our pamphlet once I get it printed up, take that down there and ask.
Well, I think the neat place would be the building next to it, which is the emergency management building.
Right. I remember you telling me about that
Yeah,
place.
that place actually has a lot of activity.
Well, I say we do a double header. I mean, if I'm going to come down, let's get the most bang for our buck. It's a long drive. So let's see if we can get in there and get into the plantation house and possibly check out the slave cemetery and the family cemetery and see what we could find. Because at least with the slave cemetery and the family cemetery, nobody could stop us. It's public. So, I mean, we should be able to get in there and do what we need to do. And from the last time I was down there, I don't remember seeing a lot of people hanging around.
No, the slave cemetery just sits back towards the river.
Mm-hmm.
And you can cross over through the one business and walk all the way back there. During the day, I think when the business is open, you can actually almost drive all the way out.
Mm.
But it's actually where the lynch laws come from, lynching laws.
Yeah.
That's actually the people who own that house are where those started.
Mm.
So imagine that big tree that sits over the cemetery, what it was used for.
Oh, yeah.
Well, back then, actually, it wasn't that type of punishment the actual laws were written about. It was about whipping and stuff like that. It wasn't hanging. Lynching didn't mean hanging back then.
Mm-hmm.
But that family also aided in the Revolutionary War by figuring out a way for us to get gunpowder or make gunpowder here in North America without having to try to smuggle it through the blockade. So,
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's about all we have for our show tonight. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. I know the next couple shows that we kind of have on the docket, we still want to talk about the American Jotlov Pass, which we had said we were going to do that show when we did the actual Jotlov Pass. So that's on, that'll be a coming show. And we're also going to be talking about the correlation between Bigfoot and UFOs or aliens, and the, I guess what you want to call it, the Bigfoot UFO hype in the 70s in Pennsylvania in the Kecksburg area of Pennsylvania. There's a lot of stuff that had happened out there. So that's going to be one of our next shows. So please tune in for that. If there's anything else you all would like for us to talk about, any kind of topic, any kind of stories or anything, please feel free to send us an email at encounters@Xplorers Group. You could get in touch with us on our website at www.explorersgroup.com. You can contact us there. It'll go to the same email address. Get a hold of us on Twitter at Explorers Group, on Facebook, facebook.com/Explorers Group. And like I said, on Instagram too, at Explorers Group. And again, like I had said earlier in the show, please go to iTunes, search Explorers Seekers of the Truth, leave us a 5-star rating, give us some kind words if you don't mind, to help us grow and spread the word, you know. So again, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to us. This was our second annual Halloween show, although a few days late. You know, what can you do? If we were ever on time for anything, I think one of us would be sick.
Or the banshee would be wailing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, well, I had fun. I hope you all enjoyed this. Like Les said, if there's any topics you'd like to hear us cover, please submit them. I'm always interested in, finding out new and interesting information. So, and sharing it. So, definitely let us know. And happy Halloween.
Yes. Happy belated Halloween, everybody. I hope your night was fun and fruitful in the form of candy. So good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.